Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Yo, thank goodness there's like under 30 comments under this video. So Thursday I went in for a dental checkup and they were like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. And they wanted to do a deep cleaning. Deep cleaning is where they basically like blast your gums with like really intense water and then do the other stuff they would normally do during a cleaning. And they were like, well, we could do it today. And if not, we can do it in November. And I was like, I think I'll just take today. I'd rather get that done sooner rather than later. But I've never had a deep cleaning before, so I didn't know how raw my mouth was gonna feel. So not only that, but because I actually did it at the end of the business day, they only did the bottom half. So I still have to get the top half cleaned, which means next month I'm gonna be feeling raw again. Right after this heals, this part's gonna go. So I don't enjoy talking very much right now. I was working on a metaphor video. I was working on 2 more 14 videos. And I'm like, I don't really want to do a whole lot of talking. So the fact that there's under 30 comments, I'm still going to answer them, even though it's a little uncomfortable. I might even sound a little bit off occasionally, just because I'm trying to mitigate some of that pain. I'll do my best here, guys, but don't be surprised if my answers are a little short this week. Anyway, before we go on and actually start the Q&A. No sponsor, no magic spoons on this one, but there was another person who signed up for the Patreon. We suddenly had some Patreon signups as of late. Fargan, thanks for becoming a member over there as well. We had to thank one last week, thank one this week. We had, it was Hellhound Lord last week, and we have Fargan this week. So thank you to both of you for signing up for the Patreon. Yeah, my content's all available for free here on YouTube. I don't like money gating any of my content. I don't think it makes sense for my content, but when people support, I throw them a shout out here in the weekly Q&A. So thank you to both of you. And with that, and to everyone else who signed up on the Patreon. And with that, let's get into the Q&A so I can stop using my mouth. Okay, I think I remember earlier in the week checking and seeing that even though there weren't that many comments, I think like there was still like 12 or something questions. I think I looked on like Thursday after this was done. So here we have the first one, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, hi, good morning. Good morning. It's afternoon for me, but good morning to you now. So just started my first Ultimate 2 weeks ago in PF, and I'm near the end. Nice. I'm noticing it's much harder to fill Perfect Alexander prog parties than any other prog point. That's because it's the furthest in the fight. So naturally, there's always more people working on the earlier parts than there are working on the later parts. Based off my own observations, it seems like most of the players I've been progging with are swapping to C4-1s. To my surprise, they've been filling pretty quickly, but coming from Savage, I thought C4-1s were stigmatized again, so why is that different for Ultimate? So, C4-1s are stigmatized. That being said, in Ultimate more than Savage, there are people who are ultra willing to do them. That really began, I think, with Project Ultimate, which is run by Sauce and a whole bunch of other content creators and raiders. And they kind of normalized it for Ultimates. People just like to go in, do their performance, get people clears, move on to another PF. It ensures essentially that if somebody's at the point where they can clear the fight in an Ultimate, it more likely means that they actually understand how to play the game in some capacity. It's more likely. It's not 100% certain. So when they join, more often than not, you get 7 people who have cleared before and 1 person who hasn't but is at the end. You can usually get most people across a finish line, get a clear, and still get to perform pretty well on your own mark. So it's a lot different where with Savage, it's like people go into Savage, they maybe kind of limp through some parts and get kind of close to the end, and then they go in C4-1. It's way more common for something like that to happen with Savage, whereas in Ultimate, it's less likely to happen. So I think that that's really the key difference. It's far more normalized to do C4-1s in Ultimate. So, and edit, I cleared Friday night and can confirm clearing with multiple other people who are also first time just feels amazing, especially when everyone is popping off in VC. And congratulations, you ended up not even going the C4-1 route. But I think that's it. I think the culture around Ultimate C4-1s is far better than the culture around it for Savage, and the way that people approach even C4-1ing in Ultimate versus Savage is generally more acceptable. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Happy. Hi. In a recent State of the Realm, you mentioned that the Hall of the Novice for stack markers, spread markers, etc. should be required to complete. Do you think it would just be the better option if they integrate these markers more in the MSQ early on and make it apparent that these markers are going to make reappearances throughout the game? Well, they kind of have, because Crystal Tower updated all of its markers, and a lot of these markers are there now. Towers is still in Heavensward, generally by 50, 60, 70, which is, the early to halfway point of the game. You have most of these things now in the game. And yet people get to 100 and it feels like they just don't know. So there's other problems with making it required, but ultimately, and I've been saying this for the longest time, it doesn't matter what you do to help players. Some players are beyond helping themselves. You know, I'll give you a great example. And this isn't in 14, this is in anything. So there is a tutorial that explains something in Metaphor. I'm not going to say any more specifics, but it explains a very basic gameplay mechanic. Now, if you don't use that mechanic immediately, you might forget about it, but there are some people who never read about it to begin with, didn't know it was even a feature. And it happens in the first like hour of the game. And yeah, if you just stop and read for a second, you'll get it. But somebody else could go through the whole game just never realizing it was even a thing. So it's really easy for people to just let their brain kind of, I guess, lapse for even a second and miss little details that affect how they do things for dozens and dozens of hours. I've done it. I'm absolutely guilty of it. In 14, that happens and people just willingly don't improve. Like if you're at level 100 and you get a stack marker and you don't know what it does, I don't know how to help you. Like I don't even, it's bad to say, I don't even want to help a player who does that because the game has already given them all the tools they need to learn that, right? And even if you skipped to 90 and then went to 100, I know plenty of people who have done that and became expert ultimate tier raiders because they wanted to learn and improve. And it feels like there's just a lot of people in, and not just in 14, but in life who don't want to learn and improve, and you can't help them. So it doesn't matter what we do, whether they were to make it required, which would be a pain for a lot of people, whether they would integrate it more into the MSQ. People just don't learn and they don't want to learn. And it's frustrating, but it's life. So you just deal with it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello. Hi. I think the real solution for PvP, and in particular Frontline and Rival Wings, is to 1, make them 2 teams. Agreed. 2, lower the amount of participants. I don't think you need to do that for all of them, but we should have some lower man PvP modes. I think everything being 24v24v24 is not good design. Again, I also don't think 24v24v24 is that good. I think just 2 teams would be better, but still. And place Frontline and Rival Wings in the same roulette. I've had a lot of people say, in fact, there's one reply under this. I bet if I check it, it's somebody saying that they don't want Rival Wings. And in fact, I'm going to check. Yep. Ever since I've said I want people to combine Frontline and Rival Wings in the same roulette, I've had people just say, no, I wouldn't play it then. Which doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you're already playing a bad PvP game with Frontlines. Like, it's already bad. How can Rival Wings be... Okay, actually, no, I will say this. I preferred Astrologos to the Gorge. I think the Gorge with the train, with like, yeah, it's got some funny moments, but Astrologos was much more just like the core elements of the kind of MOBA-esque type. There was a lot of PvPing that happened. The bots were engaging and not really that much of a distraction. The map was just, I understand that the high ground, low ground thing was a problem, but if they flattened that, which they said they were going to do, if I remember, I think Astrologos fitting in with the 2-team Frontlines would make a lot more sense than the way Frontlines itself is actually done. Not to mention, Shatter's a terrible mode. Ansal Hakar is okay. I think Seas is the better mode, but the map for Seas is worse than the map for Ansal Hakar, so that's a thing. And then I think that all of Borderland Ruins has always been a bad map. I think the maps are just bad to begin with. I think the 3 teams, they're made for the 3 teams, and they're made badly because of that. So for me, it just makes sense. You want all of your PvP modes to be equally as engaged. You want Rival Wings and Frontlines to be synonymous. So you just have to make it work between those 2 modes. I don't understand how you can be a fan of Frontline and not a fan of, at the very least, Astrologos, which hasn't been in the game for quite some time at this point, because they're all bad modes. We literally don't have any of the common sense PvP modes, I guess, except Seas and Onsol. Those are kind of like the closest we have to it, the common sense modes. But it's like, I don't know. I just don't get the hate for Rival Wings, other than maybe Hidden Gorge as an individual map. But yes, I agree. That would lower the barrier for entry. It would get more people engaging in the modes. And it would mean that when less people are engaging, that you don't have to wait for as many people. They shot themselves in the foot ages ago with the grand companies, with Frontline, with it being the individual grand companies. That was a problem. They fixed that with the freelancer thing. But you still have 72 people. Like, it's cool on paper, but it's just so bad for queues, which is why they had to do this thing where it's only one map a day. Like, the way they've solved the problem is not by solving the problem. It's by funneling people into the modes that are problematic and making sure that they can't be spread out across multiple modes. That's ridiculous. Just fix the modes, fix the maps, fix the teams, fix everything. And yes, is it resource intensive? Sure. Is it better than relegating and destroying maps constantly because you just don't believe in them yourself as a development team? Yeah, I think it's better than that. So, yeah, just do all the things you just said. Maybe you make some other changes so Rival Wings isn't. Bring back Astrologos to fix the map. Just get rid of Hidden Gorge, bring back and I hate it because, no, fix Hidden Gorge too. I just said stop destroying the maps. Fix Hidden Gorge too. Make it not as, like, weird. It's very much like Desert Sands and Crystalline Conflict. It's, like, not even about the mode. It's about the map, and the map is just, ugh. We need help, please. Hashtag Mondays with Happy Aloha. Hey, Haps. Hi. With Endwalker, we got a new visual indicator for both Ultimates. Oh, yeah, with the PlayStation head markers. Yeah. Do you think we'll see any new visuals in Fruit? Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the visuals start as, hey, we want to do this for this fight and this fight only. But if they ever want to do something like it again, it just makes sense to use it again. I'm willing to bet the PlayStation markers were something they just began thinking, oh, yeah, we'll just do that for this. And they're like, wait, that's a really good way for us to do markers in the future. Or while they were developing it, they realized that. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think there will be Fru exclusive markers. And I won't be surprised if they get used again in the future. I think that's just just a reasonable expectation. And if it doesn't happen, it wouldn't be that surprising either. Maybe they just use what they already have and it works. But yeah, should be fine. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hi. And the cats. They're both sleeping right now. With the new Chaotic Alliance raids confirmed to be single bosses, do you have any fights you're looking forward to? Diablos. Diablos is the only, like, don't get me wrong, Cloud of Darkness is going to be cool. I've wanted Diablos to have like an actual difficult fight, and no, Del Riata doesn't count. That's not an actually difficult fight. I wanted him to have like a real high-end content version for a long time, and Diablos Hollow is, yeah, that could be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Mr. Happy. Happy Katzen. Happy chat. Hi. I hope I'm not too late. No, I sometimes I do them on Saturdays, most of the time on Sundays. I was wondering if the final step of Endwalker Relics would get a matte version. Did they not have a matte version? I could have swore they did have a matte version. Aren't there replicas of all the steps that are essentially matte versions? It goes to show how much I pay attention. I have every relic completed, and I don't know. I thought for certain that every step had like a glowless version. Guess I'll be checking the comments next week or this week. Well, next week when I go to answer it this week. I'll be looking at the comments, but I would recommend you do the same because I thought for certain there was a matte equivalent of pretty much every step, but maybe I'm wrong. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey there, Mr. Happy. Hi. I must admit I haven't been watching you for a full 10 years. That would be impressive if you had. So I don't know if this is all relevant. Are you following Dragon Age Veilguard release info? Do you plan on playing any of that? Loves a kiss to the kitties and extra scritches for Aloha. Reposting from last week since it got skipped. Got skipped? Maybe you asked it after I was done. I thought I got every question last week. I have, and for like the social bits and like the relationship bits, it seems like it's fine. I'm not crazy about the art direction. Like I prefer Inquisition's art direction versus this. But for me, the gameplay just doesn't look, I don't know. Something about it just doesn't work for me. So like I want to play it because it might be one of those cases where I really need to play it to get a feel for it. But I've got a pretty good like eye for gameplay that's like good most of the time. I mean, obviously there's individual taste, but like, for example, I called that Black Myth Wukong's gameplay was not going to be good. I called it because everything they were doing or everything that we saw prior to the release, essentially I was like, that's probably the full kit. Like they've probably shown us everything and in the most impressive light that they possibly could. But I bet that it's unsatisfying for me. Like it just looked unsatisfying. And sure enough, I was right. Black Myth Wukong's weakest aspect is its gameplay. Every other aspect is fantastic. This, I think it's going to be more of the same, but the art direction not being as good for me. I don't know. It really kills it. Because you cannot sell me a game on relationships with characters alone. It won't work. I need the whole game to come together, have ups and downs, doesn't need to be perfect, but it all needs to work. And when the gameplay, the thing I'm engaging with the most is subpar, it kills my interest. So when I look at a game and the gameplay looks like, sometimes something else needs to pull me in. A good example was Harvestella, which I ended up loving. It has really subpar gameplay, but the promise of an interesting RPG story and the farming aspects pulled me in. Now, I learned as I was playing that the farming aspects aren't that important, but that the story and the music and the world are very interesting. The character relationships, they did pull me in. Now, they kept me playing after I had been pulled in through my interest in the first place. And that's why I think I need to play Veilguard to know if I like it. Because I just look at it and I don't know. It's not even like, the gameplay doesn't look that appealing, and you can't sell me on character relationships. And to me, that's what it always has going. I don't know, I just prefer Inquisition. Like, I would rather have a remaster of Inquisition, practically, than Veilguard. And that's unfortunate, because I'm not nostalgic about Dragon Age that much. Like, it's not like Final Fantasy where I have all these things. I just preferred some of the things in Inquisition over what I've seen. So I don't know how I feel yet. That's really all it comes down to, but I'm not that excited for it. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hi. I hope you and your cats are doing well. Aloha is a little funky, but that's been the case. Aloha, ever since he's been on his meds, has been weird. I'm under the assumption that you are a mount collector. Sort of. I need to think a mount is interesting. I don't just collect them for no reason. Judging by the variety of mounts I've seen in your videos, my question is, what is your favorite mount in the game? So I actually made a video of my top 5 favorite mounts. And my favorite mount isn't even for its appearance. It's the Tyrannosaurus Rex from Eureka. Just because it was a really difficult time in my life. And when I came back from that really difficult time, the T-Rex was the next mount I got. And I just had a lot of fun being social inside of Eureka Animos. As a mount, I don't care much for it, like the appearance. But it reminds me of a hard time that went way better than it could have gone. So, and if that doesn't count, then for memories also, Ozma. Ozma, I think, is one of the coolest design mounts, like the transformation sequences and everything. I think the music is a complete miss, but that's a world first. I was one of the world first members who beat Proto Ozma. So, and I can't wait till I get 24-man Ozma. That's going to be a time. But yeah, those two have really, really fond memories for me. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Hi. What are the realistic expectations for 8.0 job identity update? Been playing this game for a very long time. Always felt it was easy to predict what the devs will do, but this time I'm a bit left in the dark. I don't see any drastic changes coming, and I think you're smart for thinking that, but maybe smaller changes that add up in the end. I think you're on the money. We're introducing job unique mechanics. Nailed it. So, the big thing is access to power. How do jobs access their power? That's what gives them a unique feel, even if the outcome is the same. Now, what happened is a lot of jobs do not have different means of accessing their power. So, great example. Look at Dark Knight. Look at Warrior. While, yes, Dark Knight has all these off globals they have to manage with their MP, their buff window isn't really that much different than Warriors. They essentially press a button that gives them access to 3 really strong attacks back to back. And then they just have to use all their other buttons in between that. Warrior just doesn't have as many buttons to press, and instead they have really big, like, direct critical hits. And people like that better. Warrior was doing it first, and people liked it better on that. And Dark Knight has been the not Warrior joke. It's been the butt of it for ages. So changing the way Dark Knight accesses its power goes a long way to affecting its identity. Now, obviously, there are other factors to identity, such as being the only job that's capable of doing something. A good example is Mantra for Monk and Earth's Reply. Monk is this incredibly, like, party heal focused melee that also does really good damage, and it stands out for that. It also has the Nadis are a far more unique aspect. Well, there are other systems somewhat similar to the Nadis. The way that Monk uses them is more unique to it. Whereas you look at Reaper and Viper, and those two jobs are effectively the same in terms of the way they access their power. Just Reaper still have its buff to manage, and does it have like different buttons with different names? Sure, but the whole fill the gauge to 50 and go into your super fast mode with some off globals, still the same. I think that's the number one thing that you should expect them to hit, is jobs with overlapping power identities. being separated, which means a lot of job gauges changing, rotations changing, but only among a few specific jobs. I don't expect some jobs to change all that much. And then you just also have to weigh, are some of them hitting a critical mass? So I think you're closer to correct, though. It's not that they're going to be drastic so much as it's going to be a lot of little things they change to change the access to how jobs get to their point of power. I think there are other things they could do that are still within the realm of keeping the game feeling very similar to now. But, also taking a step back to some things that I think work better. I'll always say the Shadowbringers buff alignment was far better than Endwalker and Dawntrail, which moved fully into the 2-minute meta. And I think they should go back to that a little bit more because that does give job identity and party flavor. And I think we're past the point of it mattering too much. At least I think we are. And people are far more okay with the idea of playing the job they like and maybe a job not being as strong. Like Summoner is not strong at all. And we see it all the time now because of how easy it is to play. And I think people are way more okay with that idea. So I think they've got room to take a step back and do some things they did earlier that I think were better versus demodernizing, which going back to Heaven's Word, I think would be a bad idea. So, but I think you're closer to correct. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Haps. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. My question is about roulettes and leveling rewards. Is there a specific reason why you can't grind the most relevant tomes whilst also leveling a new job? Like queuing for a random roulette, like leveling a job below level cap and not getting the relevant tomes. Wouldn't it be more convenient as long as you have one job at 100? Yeah, but they don't want you doing that. They want you doing it for one particular reason or the other instead of double dipping. Would it be more convenient? Absolutely. But it also doesn't in any way, all it does is reduce the amount of time someone's going to play the game effectively. And they never want to deliberately do that. They always want there to be some sort of give or take. And that's just game design in general. You can't just give everyone everything all the time or they just stop playing because they're getting everything done even faster. I mean, that's why we still have tome caps. Because they don't want you to just farm out all your tome gear and be done for the next 4 months, right? Some of it's definitely business, but some of it's also just straight up, how do I put it? I'm trying to think of the word for it. Business meaning that they want you to play longer, so you pay for longer. But the other part, oh God, what's the word for it? It was on the tip of my tongue. They also just want you making measured decisions. That's the only other way I could think to put it, with how you use a resource for the day. And God, I don't know how to put it. It just doesn't make sense for you to be doing something as a level 15 job and getting max level progress. It just doesn't make sense in any regard, realistically. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Salutations, Sir Haps. Hello. I was wondering, with your job being a gaming content creator, what is gaming like for you outside of content creation? I barely do it. I watch literally almost no gaming content on YouTube. Like sometimes something will throw in my recommended and I'll be like, oh, that looks interesting and it's gaming related. But most of the time, I just don't involve myself with game. I mean, I go to the gym, I cook, I spend time with my cats. Yeah, and like if I'm doing something for stream or work, yeah, I'll go do some gaming related stuff. But I very rarely just want to sit there and game unless it overlaps with something I'm doing for stream. So I don't have to do it on stream, or I don't have to do it for YouTube, or I don't have to do it just for stream, because for YouTube I always have to record off stream. But yeah, I don't do a lot of gaming off of work related stuff. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, hello. Hi. And one more for the bank. Pocketing that. I know you're really looking forward to Metaphor's launch, as am I, along with Silent Hill 2. What other games were expected to see by the end of the year you're looking forward to? Dragon Quest 3, Fantasian, Romancing Saga 2, Sparking Zero is this week. What's another one? Sonic, Shadow X Sonic Generation, Sonic X Shadow Generations. Don't Google Sonic X Shadow with the safe mode off. Don't do that. Oh, there's so many. I mean, so for some people, Veilguard, you mentioned Silent Hill. God, there's something on the tip of my tongue that I can't remember right now because my mouth is just infuriating me as I talk. Yeah, it's definitely getting in the way of my thinking. Yeah, there's a lot. there's a lot. It's a lot. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Happy. Hi. Do you feel confident after ReFantasia you can name your game of the year? You're waiting for another game. Oh, it's Rebirth. I think Rebirth is the fullest experience. I have my criticisms of Rebirth, you know. I liked most of the mini games, most of them. But even still, from like a narrative, from like a music, from like an art direction, I just think it's the only full package game I've played this year. Now, could I see other games winning? Yes. I think Wukong is going to win because of the popularity alone. And I'm not saying, obviously, I think the popular vote for Game Awards only makes up 10% of the total vote versus all the people on the like voting board. I don't know if they're changing that this year or not. But I think that it's just, I think it is going to be voted as Game of the Year. I don't know. I feel like that's going to be a popularity Game of the Year kind of situation. I would like for it not to be the case. I don't think it deserves Game of the Year. I think it deserves like best art direction, best cinematography. Like, I think it deserves a lot of rewards for the way that the story is presented and the quality. Just not Game of the Year in like other regards. Like the actual meat of playing the game is just too underwhelming. Rebirth, I think, is, and I do think some of that's Final Fantasy bias, to be fair. But like, I wouldn't have said, like, I mean, I wouldn't have said 16 was Game of the Year. It was one of my favorite games of that year, but I would have never said that game's going to be Game of the Year. So the bias doesn't always win. I don't know. I think ReFantazio is in that running. I don't think Veilguard's going to win it. I know Inquisition really came out of nowhere in 2013 to win, but there wasn't really a whole lot else going on that year. So, yeah, I think Rebirth is still Game of the Year. Like, objectively speaking, Game of the Year. But I don't think it'll win. So, take that as you will. Hashtag Parasocial Mondays with Mr. Happy. My favorite. Hey, Haps. Hi. Curious about your Warrior of Light. I know the game tends to portray us as being stoic, silent protagonists. In your own head, what kind of personality do you attribute to your Lala? I don't roleplay. I didn't even want a Lalafell. I'm a Lalafell because somebody wanted me to judge like a glam contest that was Lalafell only, and they wanted me to be a Lalafell for it. So they bought me 5 Fantasias and had me change into it, and I did, and then they never held the contest. And I just stayed Lalafell because being small was easier. I don't add backstory or like whatever to my characters in game. It's just, I get attached to the character, but not attached in the way that like I feel like a desire to like fabricate a fantasy for them. No, I got a lot of shit going on in real life, and that eats up my brain capacity. As much as the idea of escaping into a fantasy is nice for some people, for me, I'm like, nah, dude, I got to keep shit on the up and up, looking forward, because if I don't, I'm going to explode. So I don't have any sort of backstory or role-playing aspects to my character at all. I was right. There were a lot of questions, and my mouth is really starting to aggravate me, so let's get moving. I've been answering. Why am I talking? Hashtag Mondays. Why am I talking? Weekly Q&A. Hey, Habs, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm doing just fine. Mildly uncomfortable. Thanks for the thoughts on the past Wall Boss thoughts before. You're welcome. I don't remember. But 2 hopefully quick questions, this time with being when streaming, though you do it as a living, when at a point of needing to grind for levels, is it okay to stream the grind? I think it depends on the grind. Sometimes the grind is okay to stream. Sometimes it's not. I think it really depends on what the grind is. Like if you're grinding for something that is absurdly like takes an absurdly long time to do, and it's something almost no one has done, I think that is fine. I think when you're just doing it because you want to, like, okay, let's say Final Fantasy V. There's jobs. Well, yes, there is a trophy for mastering all the jobs. Job grinding in like Final Fantasy V, I don't think is a good thing to stream. Like that's something I would do off stream, or I would recommend people to do off stream and like not limit it to stream time. Whereas, what's a good example? I'm trying to think. Like action RPG grinds are really good, but that's because there's RNG involved. If you were going for, well, okay, like an Ultimate. Ultimate is a 16 hour a day grind where there's a constant set of progression. I know that's not what you mean, but if you're going to sit there and grind something for 16 hours a day, it needs to be more engaging than pressing the button. Like, I don't know how people do BDO, like, or did BDO when it was like ultra grindy of just like grinding mobs. That to me, it's just, oh, kill me. Yeah, but it is dependent on person. I think it also is dependent on the grind. And then 2 hopefully quick questions. Where's the second question? Oh, is the second question just get something to get used to if you want to stream everything? Yeah, I mean, you don't have a choice. If you want to grind and you got to stream grinding, then you got to, that's what you got to do. But that's on you. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Sup, Happy? Hey, how you doing? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right with my mouth again. Hopefully you're doing good. I've been playing since Shadowbringers, and I've been sitting on high-quality weapon mats for Shadowbringers and Endwalker streams for a long time. Is there a specific timeline for when those weapons are created? No. There's no timeline. You just have to be ready. As soon as they're in the patch notes, you hit the market board, you craft them into the weapons and hit the market board immediately. So every major patch, just be ready to go. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hi. I have a feeling that I can't shake recently. When 14 went from critical failure to massive success, Yoshi P stated in his own words that he and his team looked outwards to other MMOs for inspiration. I feel like this slowly stopped happening, and 14 feels like a game being made in a vacuum again. It's a very different vacuum. Nearly every problem currently plaguing 14 has been solved in some form by other MMOs. Lack of casual, hardcore, mid-core content? No. If you're talking about Mythic Plus, I don't think that's a solution. I don't want to get into why, but I don't think that's a solution. Slow content release schedule. Well, it's a consistent content release schedule, but yeah, I get what you mean. It depends. It really does depend. So here's the thing. If you're not a raider in WoW, there isn't really a whole lot to look forward to on WoW releases. You're either a raider or a Mythic Plus person, and then I guess PvP are in third, although WoW PvP has certainly fallen from what it used to be. If you're not one of those things, you effectively don't care what the release schedule is for World of Warcraft. You kind of just are keeping up with it to keep up with it at that point. And that's not the greatest either. Whereas 14, its problem is that it's diversified too much. If you are just into one thing, you're fucked. You're never going to have enough. It's like the complete opposite problem, whereas WoW is trying to create something that is like essentially a constant hill. And it's appealing to people who constantly like having a hill to climb, whether it be higher Mythic Plus keys, competitions for that, or, you know, the high-end raids and stuff like that. Our game is essentially made to be completed. Reward structure, they're working on it. We'll be able to judge that later, this expansion. Ultra simplistic job. See, I still don't feel that way about job design, because every time I play a different job, I feel like I'm playing a different job. I think some things need to be adjusted, but I don't ever feel that way. Because like every game eventually boils down to me just, like everyone just plays what's the best anyway. So job design being varied doesn't make any sense, because you essentially still just always do the same thing. Like maybe you change a talent around, like one talent. And it's like, okay, but 14 just gives you all the, like, that's what I mean. It's like, these aren't problems. These are perceptions or preferences that people may have. Perhaps they don't even see them as problems. Yeah, I don't see them as problems. I'm not saying 14 needs Mythic Plus. I didn't even get to that. Ideas from other MMOs can be modified to fit this game's structure. A great effort. I think the biggest problem is not any of those things. It's simply when they choose to release certain things. I don't think you can release a brand new expansion with only the story and then a bunch of like, what's the word? Tangential grinds that happen all at once. Will I do them? Sure. Do I think it's a good idea? No. I don't think relying solely on the game story, 2 extremes, normal, savage, and then like treasure maps and fates, gemstones, and leveling. You need something engaging, at least in the promised timeline of like 7.1 or 7.15 or X.15. So something like the exploration zone should not be in X.25, because you don't run into any of these problems if you just have something like that. The job design is something barely anyone actually complains about. It's just a few very loud people who complain about it. Most people are generally okay with picking their favorite job and going based on feel. Most people don't even do mid to hardcore content. There are a lot of people who do. I do. I'd say it's like 20 to 25% probably that engage in like mid-core content, extremes and upward. But so yeah, the big thing is that the masses of 14 are not doing the things that people like me or people like you see as problems. And of course, we're going to talk about them because we have problems with them. So that's the thing. It's that our opinions are the minority opinions. And while they are absolutely working to address things, they will never be at a point where you can one game Final Fantasy 14. And they don't want a one game Final Fantasy 14. So that just means you play something like, does play something else thing's kind of a meme, but it is genuinely like the thing. This isn't a play one game game. A lot of other MMOs are trying to be the play one game game. Throne and Liberty just came out. You got to make sure you're with your guilds, that you're active several days a week, that you have your resources, that even the one thing I noticed really quick with Throne and Liberty is that if you don't do a day, yes, it will stack that stuff so you can do it the next day. But the amount of time investment when you miss a day and then have to stack days worth of rewards on top of each other is massive. It's because Throne and Liberty is trying to compete to being the one game that you play. WoW generally also does the same thing. The things that eat a lot of time are trying to be the one game that you play. 14 isn't. And while I think that doesn't apply to the job design, which again, I think is really a matter of perspective, and I do think they need to improve it. I'm on the side of they need to improve it, even though I don't really feel quite as deeply about it as other people. It just won't be. It's never going to be the one game. I just get the feeling they've stopped. No, they're definitely still looking. I mean, Yoshi P goes to BlizzCon. He sees things. But it's like solving a problem doesn't mean you're not creating new problems. Like, are there certain things they could solve problem-wise that I think just don't have downsides? Yeah, the glam system. It's overly complex for no reason. And I don't see a downside to transmogrification in World of Warcraft. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see a downside to just doing that. Or even the way Guild Wars 2 does it. Like, that to me is a problem that they I don't know why they haven't, like, tried to reapproach it and solve it versus what they do now. It's got to be something. Like, I don't know what it is. But I think a lot of it is just the problems it creates do not help the problems that it solves, or are not worth solving the other problem. And that is a thing. So I don't know. It's tough. It's not easy, I guess, is the answer to the end. At the end of it all, it's not what they can. It's that it's not easy. It's not as simple as just, oh, copy that. It doesn't work that way. You can't just do that. It doesn't always work. So curious to see how the rest of this expansion pans out. But I think for me, the big thing is they need to stop waiting so long to release stuff like exploration content or some of the other large-scale content they have planned that needs to be promised earlier in the expansion release schedule. It just can't wait 8-9 months. It just can't. Okay, so what's interesting is that generally when a question is at the very bottom, it means it's been downvoted most of the time. So the fact that I have a hashtag here is the very bottom comment, which has not happened, is interesting. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Mr. Man of Happiness. Hi, I'm trying to understand part of the community's obsession with chasing evergreen grindable content. Did I not just, I feel like I just covered this. Maybe that's why, because it's related to the other one. As far as I know, most, if not all, content in the game is evergreen. Well, I know part of the group has actually done all the content already. There's not a lot willing to do so because there isn't their preference or reward. It's not worth it. It's just stubbornness to not do things or reorient your goals to fit doing it. Okay, let me finish because there's a lot more text. There's also a hatred for one and done content too. It makes me feel like they want me to play another game where there's an endless treadmill. 14 has never been that type of game. Yeah, I have my own opinions about one and done content. I think it's okay in moderation. I think when you only, Endwalker's problem was almost all of the content was one and done. I think it's one of those in moderation things, and that's what they failed in Endwalker. So I think that's where the hatred comes from. In relation, why is telling people to take a break so offensive? I don't know why that's offensive. That I never got that. Because I genuinely, again, I'm with you where I don't think this is this can't be your sole game. Unless you're just socializing. Like if you just hop on to socialize and that's why it's your one game, that makes sense to me. But in terms of content, is there stuff you could technically be doing all the time? Yeah. Should I expect anyone to be interested in doing all of it? No. 14 could be a better game than what it is now, but what they are after seems to not be what 14 is best at. Yeah. Why is this at the bottom? This is a pretty normal question. Sounds like 14 is in its Mists of Pandaria era. I don't remember. I stopped playing in Cataclysm, so I missed. Mists of Pandaria. Yeah, no, I don't know either. I think you need some stuff that's long-term, but evergreen? I don't know. I also don't see the appeal in something that is entirely evergreen. Like, I played Final Fantasy XI. That game was evergreen, and I never want to go back to it. I played it for, like, a decade. Hardcore. And I'd never want that again because it was nightmare inducing, the amount of time and effort. And like, it was a lot. Like, I don't mind socializing with people, but there's a difference between socializing and what Final Fantasy XI was. Like, it was a mix of both, but like, I never really cared about the content or felt challenged by 11's content. was just a giant chatting, like a chatting thing, because the actual evergreen content was like, I didn't want to do it for all those years and years and years and years and years. But I think some of it, though, is also, how do I put this? It's misinterpreting the reward structure problem with what is evergreen grindable. I think there should always be an end to what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. You should finish it and then feel like you accomplished something. But when the reward structure is so unrewarding that one and done thing is how you feel, you wish you could engage with the game more because you liked the thing that you just did, but you just wish you could engage with it more. It's kind of like playing an RPG, right? And when you beat it, you get that kind of hole in your body, right? That, oh, it's done. Like you're like depressed that the game is done and behind you, even though you know there's going to be another one. It's just, I don't know, there's that feeling. And it's like, but you kind of accept, oh, well, the game's done. I beat it. Like, of course it's done. But with an MMO, you kind of just forget that, right? Because you're like, oh, it's an MMO. It's never done. So even when you're done with something, you're like, but I don't want to be done with it. I'm paying monthly. It's an MMORPG. I want to grind. I want to do stuff that's... I think a lot of it's the perception. I understand what you're saying, but I also think, again, that you can have evergreen stuff. It just doesn't need to be everything. The problem is it has nothing. And so people have to kind of make up their own evergreen content, like doing deep dungeons all the time or doing Eureka all the time or grinding Gil. Like they have to make something that comes off as evergreen. DPS Darknet already exists. I accidentally bumped my microphone. So yeah, but I get what you're saying. And I agree with you in a lot of ways. But it's just, you're never going to be on all sides at once. And 14 wants to be, but it can't. So we're always going to have these discussions. They're always going to bounce back and forth. And always going to come down to preference more so than fundamental issues with the game. So it's kind of like it's kind of just a big circle jerk. But it is what it is. Anyway, that is the last question, I believe. So that is going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to like and subscribe, ask your questions in the comment section for next week's video. And yeah, I'll see you then. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.